Hi, my name is Jane Handforth and I'd like to introduce you to Dyadic Interviews as a teaching strategy. I teach professional development to hairdressers, and I was looking for something that is more educational value than an icebreaker, but with the same interaction, getting everybody up and talking to one another so I can create a safe and comfortable learning environment. But my time is so limited, I teach 1 or 2 day workshops. So when I came across Dyadic Interviews, I thought, aha, this is it. So let's start with the definition. The word dyad means twofold. You have two-party communications, and both parties are both sender and receiver. It's characterized by dialogue, and it's time-bound. The characteristics: primary mode is collaborative. Activity focus is discussing. Duration of activity is single session. These work best at addressing values and attitudes, beliefs, and prior experience as these relate to the course material. There are two types of dyadic interviews. Formal follows a standard set of procedures where answers can be readily compared, and informal, where you can discuss freely, at length, and in greater depth. An example is a hairdresser and a client discussing a new look. The limitations: it takes more time to resolve an issue or a problem than some other techniques. Leadership roles are not clearly defined, and logistical issues such as time and venue might limit your use of dyadic interviews. The advantages: you have highly involved and engaged participants. Exercise of power and authority is contained. Minimal disagreement. Moral reasoning can be developed through dyadic interviewing. Disadvantages: closeness and familiarity among learners may affect disclosure of thoughts and formality of discussion. The ethical, cultural, and gender implications of dyadic interviews. Some topics may be too sensitive, and some cultures are less assertive than others. Senior and older participants tend to dominate. Males may be more assertive. You need to use caution and good judgment when selecting the partners. Dyadic interviews as a teaching strategy. The facilitator uses a system to pick the partners. The partners play a role of both sender and receiver. The facilitator says switch when time is up. No comments or judgments are made during the interviews. This is reserved for the review. The role of the educator is to provide the topics or tasks to be achieved. You may provide questions and you may not. You assign the partners, set the time limits. Identify the information to be gathered, supervise and facilitate, and provide additional feedback. The role of the learner is to pre-prepare with readings and research on the topic. Prepare questions on how to gather more information in an interview. Engage discussion with partner. Synthesize information gathered and report to facilitator, either written or oral, relating the interview topic with the course content. Best practices: dyadic interviews are well suited to any course that involves management or communication. Some practical examples are a realtor interviewing a couple regarding housing needs, a hairdresser consulting a client about a new look, a police detective interviewing a suspect and his lawyer. How I will use dyadic interviews. As I mentioned at the beginning of the video, because my time is so limited, I wanted something that had the same interaction as an icebreaker but with something more. In my color correction course, I will use dyadic interviews to help learners anticipate how they might respond to challenging situations they're likely to encounter in the salon. I will use my professional experience to create a worksheet with a series of "what would you do if" questions. The learner pairs will use the questions to interview each other. After the interviews, the learners will be put in small groups and asked to give a brief summary of their partner's responses to the group. Groups will then be asked to choose the question that concerned them the most. I will use their responses as a basis for a whole class discussion on how best to handle the most anxiety-provoking scenarios. My goal is to reduce the anxiety and prepare the learners to respond effectively to problems they will face behind the chair. An added benefit of this technique is that learners' consultation skills will improve as they are to question, listen, and probe for further information, but not to evaluate or respond at that moment. To sum up a step-by-step, develop a list of interview questions prior to the classroom session. Divide the learners into pairs. Explain the procedure. Emphasize that learner A will interview learner B until you say, "Time to switch." Clarify that the role of interviewer is to ask questions, listen, and probe for further information, but not to evaluate or respond with ideas. Tell the learners they will be summarizing their partner's responses either as an essay or a group discussion. I hope you will consider dyadic interviews as a teaching strategy for your next class.